Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of Libertarian Censored Podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have, individuals have a natural right to contract. That's from Humbly My Brain, and they said, that's what the Gadsden flag, and they had, individuals have the right to walk away from a contract when the terms of the contract have been broken and violated. Many will speak of a social contract. What is to be done when the social contract is broken and violated? And I would agree with that. Ultimately, I think people should be able to justify whatever they want to, and yeah, if they feel like the terms of a contract have been violated and want to walk away from it, I think they should be able to. I think, people should have the freedom of association to associate with whoever they want to. And that's my thought on that issue. Then we have a message from the Libertarian Party of Colorado from Humanitas Anti-Odium, and they said the Libertarian Party of Colorado will not nominate Chase Oliver and Mike Termat as candidates for president and vice president. LPCO has always firmly stood for liberty, principled opposition to overreaching government, and the promotion of individual freedoms. Our commitment to these values guides our decisions and actions. Tonight, the LPCO board passed a resolution affirming our dedication to these principles by deciding not to submit paperwork to place the Oliver Termat ticket on the Colorado presidential ballot. And then they said reasoning, Oliver was pretty into stuff like gender affirming care for minors. He was mass and distancing himself at this Thanksgiving dinner in 2020. And yeah, all that, he's silent about the Russian collusion and all that. And I think, if they wanted to justify that, I think they should be able to. I don't think a state political party should be forced to nominate its national candidate. And that's my thoughts on that issue. People should have the freedom of association to justify whatever they want to. Then we have Republican congressman wants to limit IVF access to married heterosexual veterans only from Advocate.com, and that's that's by Nikki Elections across from the LGBT news subreddit. And I said, speaking of the Advocate, I will never forget when I saw the cover of their November 2016 issue next to the cover of New York Magazine's November 2016 issue at my college library for the 2016 election. The Advocate had a cover of Hillary Clinton that said #winner on it, and New York Magazine had a cover with Trump's face on it that said loser and what he's already won. So that just goes to show you how the media is definitely very biased there. As for Rosendale, the representative the article is talking about, he's definitely one of the more libertarian members of the U.S. Congress currently, but that's a low bar to clear, I would say. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. I personally don't agree with this policy, but I personally don't think we should be spending taxpayer money on IVF at all. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have 4 years ago, everyone in Washington, D.C. hated me for being the lone U.S. representative standing up against the CARES Act, which funded lockdowns, shutdowns, spending sprees, fraudulent PPP, and mail-in elections. A few opinions have changed since then, from Thomas Massey on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, the media, OMG, voted against the CARES Act. That must mean he doesn't care for people. It's in the name of the bill, after all. And that's how they try and get you. They say, they'll label the bill something like, the Don't Say Gay bill, and they say, if you pass this bill, I guess you're against people saying the word gay. That's how the media tries to control the narrative over certain bills, and we can't let them do that. Just because you vote against a bill that has a nice sounding name doesn't mean it's a good bill, and that's my fault on that issue. Then we have paternalism and its unintended consequences from increasing cigarette use from lemon limelight. And they said a pair of recent working papers demonstrates the unintended consequences of well-meaning regulation. Here, it's e-cigarette flavor bans. One study, the effect of e-cigarette flavor bans on tobacco use, says this study is among the first to examine the effect of state and local restrictions on the sale of flavored electronic nicotine delivery system ENDS products on youth and young adult tobacco use. We find that the adoption of an ENDS flavor restriction or use is frequent in everyday youth ENDS. However, we also detect evidence of an unintended effect of ENDS flavor restrictions that is especially clear among 18 to 20-year-olds, including substitution to combustible cigarette smoking. In the other study, Comprehensive E-Cigarette Flavor Bans and Tobacco Use Among Youth and Adults, says, in this study, we examine the effects of these comprehensive bans on e-cigarette use and potential spillovers into other tobacco use by youth, young adults, and adults. We find evidence that the young adults decrease their use of the ban-flavored e-cigarettes as well as their overall e-cigarette use by about 2 percentage points, while increasing cigarette use. And I would agree with that. Ultimately, people will always just find a substitution if you ban one thing. And that's why, you shouldn't, and if you ban something, people want it even more than if it wasn't banned. and that's why I definitely think the government shouldn't be banning anything as long as people if people want to put whatever they want into their body, I think they should be able to, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have these are people who think that you shouldn't be allowed to ask on a job application whether somebody's a felon, but also that you should be fired immediately if somebody discovers you made a racist joke on the internet 15 years ago by Wayne Burkett on Twitter, and I posted that. And that was him quote tweeting Billy Benny, who said, "It's very difficult for me to reconcile the left position on criminal justice reform in which I generally agree with arresting looking teenagers and felony charges for leaving tread marks on a pride flag in the street. That doesn't make sense." And I like Wayne Burkett. They also said he said, "Also, I don't know how you conclude anything other than it's merely friend enemy. You can't reconcile these two positions unless you generally believe that's way worse for you to say somebody bad about my favorite group than just to say kill somebody." And my thoughts on that issue are, most people only care whoever who is in the out group, who is in the group, and nothing more than that. They'll think, oh, we need to let out all the murderers after a certain amount of years because they were disadvantaged and it's all school to prison pipeline and all that. But also, if you dare disrespect the pride flag in any way, it's life in prison. Or if you do wrong thing, they don't have principles. The left really doesn't have principles. It just has in group out group. The right does as well, but the left is really bad when it comes to criminal justice reform. I would say that they say, oh, we're against overcriminalization, while increasingly pushing for more bans on speech and expression, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have live updates. Hunter Biden found guilty on all counts in gun case from CNN.com, and I posted that, and I said, it's just because they need to both sides the Donald Trump conviction. That's the only reason I think he was found guilty. I personally think it's a victimless crime. I don't think he should have been charged for it. But with that being said, the main reason he's found guilty is because they need both sides the Donald Trump conviction. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Challenges R40, School Board in Florida bans book about book bans from Tallahassee.com by Ref Libman. And I didn't comment on this one, but I agree with this. What Captain GL6 here says: no books are banned anywhere in the United States. Stop spreading Democrat propaganda. And I agree very much with that. It's just because they're censored, they're not provided by the school, doesn't make them banned, and that's very important to remember. I'm sure in some schools don't provide Mein Kampf or the Turner Diaries, and that doesn't make those books banned either, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the danger of polite politicians from Common Sense Soapbox on YouTube, and I posted that, and I said, this video is about how leaks it's videos how about leaks like Alex Soros use language of social justice to make their authoritarianism sound more appealing and justified. He's one of George Soros' sons and one of the WEF Young Global Leaders and on the board of Soros Fund Management. It looks like he's currently dating Huma Abedin, the HRC's lackey who was formerly of Anthony Weiner. And, yeah, that just goes to show you that, WEF types who want to take away all your freedom in the name of equity, and social justice aren't your friends, even if you agree with those principles. And that's my thought on that issue. Then we have Senator Lindsey Graham says he will block Democrats' efforts to unanimously pass Supreme Court ethics reform bill from NBCNews.com by Ninja Lover, and I didn't comment on that one, but yeah, I definitely don't think that's good. I think people should be more concerned about Lindsey Graham's constant warmongering and calls to bomb Iran, however, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have more Texas counties are trying to prevent people from using specific roads to get an abortion. From APnews.com by Anarcho Federation, they added, "What? Don't let the struggle against federal government overlook the tyranny of the states." And I'd agree with that. Just because tyranny is local doesn't mean it's not as bad as it's on a national, global level. But that being said, we must stand against all types of tyranny, I would say, not just state tyranny. Stand against all tyranny. That's my thoughts on that issue. Now we have The Question of Abortion by J Stocks QQQ, and they added defending the contest. It's an abortion saving lover's life from imminent death is always legal and all options below. And they posted a poll, and the poll options were: abortion should be legal from conception, abortion should be legal only after a heartbeat, abortion should be legal only after point of viability, abortion should be legal in all circumstances, entire pregnancy, other legal explaining comments, and legal in all circumstances won with 29 votes. 9 votes for only after point viability, 4 votes for only after heartbeat, 4 votes from conception, 2 votes for other illegal, and 5 votes for other illegal. And I said, as long as the fetus is inside I think as long as the fetus is inside, I think it should be legal. After it gets outside, I think it should be illegal. That being said, I think if you were getting a late third trimester abortion that's not life saving, could have gotten one sooner, that you probably are probably not the best person. Of course, it all comes down to who has the force, economic, and social capital to do what. And that's my fault on that issue. That's why I think I'm historically, I do understand the pro-life position, but, I do think we need to defend bodily autonomy, and that's my fault on that issue. Then we have, I was doing some research into other third-party candidates for the upcoming post election. I just wanted to say that the quote section of this guy's Wikipedia page is based, and I posted that, and I said I'd probably stick with Oliver for priority reasons. The guy's definitely the alternative. And that was Joel Skousen. He's the guy the Constitution Party is going to have on the ballot in Nevada and Utah. Nationally, they're running Randall Terry, but I like this guy. He seems like a survivalist, kind of. I like the quotes section. He says, here's some of the quotes he gives. Many Christians, I think it's wonderful for any time government officials mention God or quote from the Bible. I take strong exception, not because I believe it isn't proper for government officials to appeal to God. I simply object to dropping the name of God or quoting scripture to cover for evil, and otherwise convince naive troops and Christians in general that evil cause is just. And I'd agree with that. Ultimately, the state, I think, is an inherent evil. Christianity is an inherent good, and that's why I personally would consider myself more on the Christian anarchist side rather than the Christian statist side. Then another quote he has is, more than ever, I still consider the nuclear attack on America as inevitable, both because the real axis of evil, Russia and China, are still building for that attack, and because our own government is controlled by those intent upon destroying U.S. sovereignty and delivering our nation over to a socialist new world order. And then he said that in 2006. And I would agree with that. I personally do think, calling Russia and China the axis of evil is kind of pushing against warmonger against them. But other than that, I do think that's very much true. If it was up to a lot of people in the U.S. government, they just have the globalist organizations like the UN, the WHO, and the ICC run everything. And that just goes to show you how they don't care about democracy when they want all these unelected globalist bodies to be the one world government. Then another quote he has is, the one thing you can learn from the liberal and controlled media, including arch-liberal newspapers like the Washington Post, NY Times, and LA Times, is the direction which the conspiracy against liberty is going. I spend about a third of my time watching what the opposition does when they start uniformly promoting certain issues in all the liberal journals: global warming, smart growth, gun control, etc. It's obvious that there is some coordination going on, but remember, you can only learn to see through the selectively filtered news dispensed by the establishment media if you have other sources that feed you the missing pieces. And I'd agree with that. I think that's why social media is very good at undermining the establishment media, and hopefully it can put them all out of business within my lifetime, and that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have, in terms of unity, we are all at a real disadvantage up against the left. It only takes one thing in common for quote-unquote liberals to unite. It only takes one difference of opinion for conservatives to divide. And I agree with that. Ultimately, I do think there's some infighting at the left as well, but I think the left is very much better about controlling the narrative, since, they control most of the alphabet media, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Ohio election shock as Republican district shifts 20 points to Democrats, from Newsweek.com by Ninja Lover, and I said, I quote from the article, Will Rowley was able to win by nearly 10 percentage points, with 54.7% of the vote to Kripchak's 45.3% of the vote. The result marks a notable decline in GOP support of the Ohio district compared to previous elections. Johnson won his last 4 elections by more than 30 percentage points. And I said, the corporate press is factual, but not truthful. Michael Malice. It's factual, yes, but when you read the headline, you think it means the Dems are blowing the GOP out of the water, and that's the narrative the media wants to establish. In reality, it could also be something like low turnout since the incumbent was supposed to be being replaced by a newcomer, where editors are awful when it comes to reading between the lines. And then I also added, the total for the 2022 midterm was 276,051 votes. The total for this election was 59,689 votes. That's why, all of your special elections aren't really good when it comes to determining voter preference and such. And, it's an all-for-your special election. You see large things all the time. It's like when Meyer Flores took a D plus 16 district special election in 2022. Turnout that low was absolutely meaningless in the grand scheme of things, And I definitely think, if there's one person who's going to drive Republican turnout, it's Donald Trump, so I definitely don't think Ohio is in play for the election, and that's my fault on that issue. Then we have, if allowed for one, should be allowed for all, from John 14, that's a crossword from the White People Twitter subreddit. It's a tweet from Dan Whitfield, who quote tweets Steph Abramson, who tweets, breaking news, Donald Trump, long rumored to be a prescription drug abuser, given special treatment about to avoid a drug test during his first post-conviction probation meeting, raising questions over Mag's nominee for, and then with his responses, Trump doesn't have to take a mandated drug test, nor a convicted felon should either. And I agree with that. Ultimately, it depends on who has enough social and economic capital, though, rather, and that's inherently what the justice system is. It's going to hold different people different standards depending on their economic and social capital. And I don't really like that, but that's just how it's proven to play out through history, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Alabama GOP chair used homemade ID to vote. AG doesn't seem to care, from AL.com by Donald Key. And yeah, I guess that's, if people want to justify using homemade IDs, I think they should be able to. I personally think, if you want to have justified voter IDs, you should be able to. I'm personally just on the side of we shouldn't have voting at all, because essentially, the state can restrict or give access to anyone the right to vote as long as it suits their narrative. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have fake libertarians expand taxation, increase executive powers, gas peaceful protesters from APnews.com, and that's not the headline they use. The AP used initial for Argentine President Milei, Senators Bruce Giebel after violent protests, and I said, libertarianism is not anarchy. Order does have to be kept at some point. Also, the first paragraph talks about the protesters throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails, so they were by no means peaceful. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Reddit in a nutshell at Reddit Lies, and I posted that on Twitter, and I shared it to the subreddit. And I said, that was the post I shared on the subreddit last night from the Coronavirus Circle Jerk subreddit, and it was Redditors saying, Redditors.jpg, Redditors, and it was the Reddit, Wojak saying, I'd have been in my basement enjoying law resistance. I'd have fought for civil rights just like Bernie. And then when the Freedom Convoy breaks out, dox their supporters, threaten their livelihoods, take their pets, treat their accounts, throw them, throw them in jail, and then I shared the sorry this post was removed from the Libertarian Uncensored, and underlined the Uncensored part. And that just goes to show you that, Reddit is ultimately a controlled platform that is run by, that doesn't allow dissent if people in positions of authority, the moderators, and above them the admins, don't allow it. And that's why Miss Aaron Schwarzenegger Reddit was committed to free speech. Now all Reddit is committed to is being a propaganda machine for the DNC. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.